So today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to open up a kind of digital time capsule. We're going back to a really pivotal moment when the personal computer first walked into the science lab and changed, well, pretty much everything. And our guide for this whole trip, it's this single, pretty remarkable artifact from 1987.
I mean, think about it for a second. Today, a super complex data analysis is literally just a click away. But what did a researcher do before all this sophisticated software, before cloud computing, before the internet was even a thing in most homes? Well, believe it or not, this textbook from 1987, it's got the answers.
Okay, so let's start our little archaeological dig here. What we're about to uncover is an artifact that just perfectly captures a technology and, a way of working right on the edge of this massive, massive change. All right, to really get this, you've got to put yourself in the 1987 mindset. The personal computer, still pretty new, still really exciting. It's not hooked up to some global network, there's no app store. Software came in a box on a floppy disk. And right in the middle of that world, this book shows up, the Manual of Pharmacological Calculations with Computer Programs. And right away, the book's purpose makes one thing crystal clear. This is not a toy. This is a serious tool for serious scientists doing really critical work, like developing and testing new drugs. The authors were basically handing them a manual for all the essential math that their entire field was built on. Now, to really appreciate how big of a deal this was, we first have to understand the old way of doing things. I mean, before all this integrated software, the cutting-edge, state-of-the-art tool for a lot of scientists was the good old pocket calculator. Yeah, the work was called manual pharmacometrics, and trust me, it was every bit as tedious as it sounds. Scientists would spend hours hunched over formulas, flipping through these big statistical tables and punching numbers into a calculator. It was just painstaking work, and imagine this. One little slip of the finger could completely mess up an entire experiment. Okay, let's make this super real. Procedure number 1 in the book is about a really fundamental task, figuring out the right dosage for a solution to make sure it's safe to use. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, the math behind it was anything but. And here are the formulas. Look, you don't have to be a pharmacologist to see the headache here. To get that final answer, Q, you first have to figure out E and G. And that means you're juggling all these different variables, molecular weight, volume, molarity, and every single one of them is another chance to make a mistake. Right, so it wasn't just one simple calculation. It was this whole chain reaction of them. The book's own preface even warns about the round-off that inevitably accompanies hand calculation. Just think about that for a second. You could do every single step perfectly and still get an imprecise answer, just because of the limits of your tools. Crazy. But then, something new showed up on the scene. And the authors of this textbook, they saw it coming. They knew it was going to be a complete game changer. The microcomputer was finally here. This quote from the preface, this is everything. The authors saw the future, plain and simple. They got that these new machines weren't just for typing letters or playing games. Nope, they were about to become absolutely essential tools for scientific research. And you can actually see them reacting to this change in real time, just by looking at how the book itself evolved. In the first edition, back in '81, the computer programs were like an afterthought, tucked away in an appendix. But by '87, for the second edition, the computer was totally integrated. Every single manual procedure was immediately followed by an example of how to do it on the machine. The computer went from the back of the book to the star of the show. And this whole new way of working, this new workflow, it was all built around one powerful piece of software that was designed specifically for these scientists. It was called PCS. That's the Pharmacologic Calculation System. And get this one single program automated all 48 of the complex procedures in the book. It was, for all intents and purposes, the killer app for this entire field of science. Okay, so its features might look pretty basic to us now, but back in 1987, this stuff was absolutely revolutionary. A menu system, the ability to actually save your data to a disk so you didn't have to type it all in again and again, and the real killer feature, generating a perfectly formatted report that you could save and then merge into a manuscript. This would have saved hours, maybe even days of just mind-numbing work. All right, so let's circle back to our example from before.
Remember all those formulas? That whole 6-step manual process just to figure out a safe dosage? Okay, hold that in your head. Now, let's see how Pharm/PCS did it.
And boom, here it is. This is the payoff. The scientist just enters the stuff they know, the molecular weight, the molarity, the volume. The computer does all the heavy lifting and then just spits out a clean, precise, and immediate answer. Those 6 steps, all those formulas, the risk of human error, all of it, just gone.
So, what does this old textbook really teach us? I mean, it's more than just a cool history lesson, right? It's a snapshot of a major turning point. It shows us not just how technology changed, but how it completely, fundamentally, changed the very nature of scientific work itself.
I just love this little detail from the book. You couldn't just go online and download the software. Of course not. You had to find the information and then order the program diskette separately, probably by mailing in a form and a check. It's just a perfect little reminder of how physical our digital world used to be. And that right there, that's the legacy. This wasn't just about making one calculation a little easier. We're talking about a single program on one floppy disk that automated 48 complex scientific procedures. That is a massive, massive leap forward. It freed up a researcher's most valuable asset, their time, and their brain power to think about the bigger picture.
And that kind of brings us to one last thought here. The introduction to this 1987 textbook says that most of its calculations really boil down to 2 simple questions: how much effect and how much drug. Now, the tools we use to answer those questions, they've changed beyond all recognition. We went from pocket calculators to this software, and now to AI-driven models that can do things we couldn't even dream of back then. But those fundamental scientific questions, they are exactly the same.